Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigators Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level. Welcome to PI Perspectives. Today we welcome Illinois Investigator Dean Gluth. Dean's one of the few investigators in the country that specialize in debugging. In this episode, you'll get a little taste of how this technology works. So listen up and listen in. Let's welcome Dean Gluth and your host, Private Investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, I am very honored to welcome a friend of mine, someone I've known for a while. We've served on a few boards together, and we're talking debugging today with Dean Gluth. Dean, how are you?
I'm excellent, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah,
Honored to be with you here today on PI Perspective.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I've been wanting to chat with you for a bit. So you are the debugging expert. It's something that not a lot of people in our industry do. I feel like more and more are trying to get into it, but it's definitely a commitment. You have Infomax, right? That's your parent company, and it's an investigation company. You're up in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, I think, right?
That's correct. Our office is in suburban Chicago.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get into the business?
Well, I went to Western Illinois University and studied law enforcement administration and justice. So I always wanted to be a cop and did that schooling. And after school, then you take the psychological exams and you take all those applications and physical tests. And that went on for about 3 or 4 years. Well, in the meantime, I had landed a security job for retail security. I worked for Neiman Marcus and Montgomery Ward, which now is gone.
Right.
A local company here in the Midwest called Madigan Brothers. And I was loss prevention manager. And then we controlled, the floor for shoplifters. But primarily my job as a manager was investigating internal theft and employee losses.
Yeah.
And we had a good run there, but I did that for 10 years. Basically spent the last 6 years of my 10 years in retail trying to figure out how to get out of it.
Right. Nice.
I was going to try anything at that point because by that point I was probably making 50 grand a year as a retail loss prevention manager. And then I did land one police job for a north suburban town up here near Chicago. And the starting salary at that point in 1985 was $22,000.
Ooh.
And so my wife at the time and we had school loans, both of us from college. We had car notes. We just had a baby, and to take the pay cut from almost 50 grand to 22 was not in the cards. Right. And actually, then I looked for another job, and luckily found an investigative company looking for an investigator. And even though again that took a pay cut, I knew that this was the path to follow.
Yeah.
And landed that job where I had to get 2 years experience working full time for him before I could then take the private detective exam in Illinois. Based on my college degree, I only needed 2 years experience. And so that happened in 1995, passed the test my first time, which if anybody knows anything about Illinois is one of the hardest PI tests in the country to take and pass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Illinois, that's a sad fact that we have a 93%,
so random.
93% first-time fail rate, and I passed that. So
yeah,
who started Infomax Investigations in 1985 and got the Indiana, Wisconsin licenses added onto that.
Nice.
And we primarily, for about 20 years, specialized in workers' comp surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one time we were pretty big, probably handling 50 cases a month. We had 5 full-time investigators doing full-time surveillances, and an office manager and a marketing director and a business development manager. And then in 2008, everything changed and the economy went down, and so did my business. And we lost one client after another. And then a lot of TPAs and insurance companies decided to go in-house and develop their own in-house investigators. So I lost a client. Seemed like every other month I was losing a major client, and I had to lay off investigators and spent the next 10 years trying to build it back up.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening then was my ex-wife and I ended up getting a divorce in about 2015 or 16, and we sold our house, and then I got taken off of her company insurance plan, her health insurance, and the next month, lo and behold, I get in a major accident, a major wreck, where I went driving through a guardrail on an interstate and tumbled down the hill and crashed down at the bottom, where they pulled me out, and I woke up in the intensive care unit for about a week, and had to start the business from there. When we sold the house, she took her money and bought herself a townhouse nearby, and I took my money and bought bug sweeping equipment.
There you go. Who made the better choice?
Yeah, so that was.
That's a crazy story, man. I'm glad you're okay. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, it was 5 years ago last month that
Wow.
that happened.
You just never know, man. Life is so short, and especially if, in our industry, right? We're road warriors. We're always out on the road doing things. It's
a lot of miles. You know, when you do 50,000 miles a year driving around, something's bound to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you pulled through, and it's so interesting to see your journey as a business owner too, and just making the pivots and dealing with recessions. I mean, I started my business in 2005, and I remember, 07, 08, how things started to pull back. And, every year I was growing by about 20 to 25%. And then the recession hit, and crazy. I still grew. I only grew at a 10% rate. But I also changed, how I was doing business and what I was focusing on. For me, it's always been personal injury. That's my focus on the plaintiff side. Folks were always having accidents, no matter how crappy the economy was. They're still crashing their cars. So I still had work to do, but it was definitely an eye opener for me in being an owner too, and seeing you go from many employees now to I assume less employees, or are you back up to those numbers?
Oh, I am the debugging experts, and I am Infomax Investigations,
Right.
and I do both at the same time, and that's me.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me because guys, Jim Nanos, the same thing. I interviewed him recently, but just his story too. Like he's been just him, and he's had a whole team of people, and it's like you go back and forth. For me, it was just me in the beginning, and then it was another person, and I'm still on that growth rate. I think the most people I had working for me at one point was probably 6, and then like another 3 or 4 consultants. And I'm a little bit less now. I think I'm like 4 with the 3 or 4 consultants now.
I also had another bad experience being the business owner of Infomax Investigations, and it turned into an employee nightmare.
Yeah.
And it became a legal issue. It became a work comp claim on me and my company. It became a personal issue between him and I. And actually, so Infomax Investigations employee number 60 was the last employee I'll ever have. And that's now, if I need any help, I subcontract it out and somebody needs to.
It's all preference. And I totally get it, man. I like, you always try and work smarter and not harder. And sometimes that means having less people, because it's a responsibility to take to take on employees and take on the responsibility of them providing for their families. And there's a lot of pressure behind that for sure.
Oh, Matt, that is a topic you just touched on. It's huge.
Yeah.
Stress of that, meeting payroll every week for the 10 employees, trying to keep the cash flow wheel turning. Some clients don't pay as regularly as they should. The check doesn't come in when it should. Now you got to meet payroll, meet taxes. And so what ended up happening for that 10 years that I was big and had all those employees was half the time I didn't get paid. And so when you find out now I get paid every week, and that's the beauty of being by myself, even though sometimes it's a little hectic.
Yeah, I mean, you hedge all that stuff on credit lines and things like that, but still, you know, I know like before COVID, you know, I was in a growth phase, and I was like, okay, so I'm gonna invest in my company, and I started taking capital I was making in growing my business. Well, then COVID happened, right? So I was like, oh crap, you know, like here we go, like here's all this money I just put in. Is am I gonna get it back? And I was like, I don't know, I'll just deal with it, you know, like God will provide a way, right? That was the way I was looking at it. And then PPP came, right? And it's like that bailed me out because you know I was getting my PPP money, and I was entitled to it. I had the losses and all that, but you know I was getting you know I was getting my clients back, and and what ended up happening is the money I was getting for the PPP ended up covering salary, and I had money left over that I could pay down my debt, which is what I did. So it almost like it boomeranged me. It went from going like uh-oh to here we go. So we kind of went off on a tangent here a little. We are going to get back to the bug sweeping stuff, because you know I just, you know, you hit some points here when you were chatting, and I was like, I can totally appreciate that. Being a business owner and you know, trying to decide if I want to be the worker or be the owner, and you know that's a constant struggle for me. You know,
and one decision that always has to be made too is whether you want to do a certain specialty or a certain line of work, or whether it's better to know the guy, know the other guy who can do that for you. And bug sweeping is one of those that I took on because, you know, I found out that, and you touched on this, where not many investigators do this, and the reason for it is because the equipment is so expensive.
Cost prohibitive.
And literally, I had to sell my house, and people have to take out second mortgages to get some of these machines and product. But if you know, there's investigators that are going out with a $5,000 RF detector and calling that a bug sweep. But you know, one of the things that we say, if you're in the know, is if you don't have a spectrum analyzer, you really shouldn't be doing a bug sweep, and you can't do a bug sweep properly without a spectrum analyzer. And that alone was $36,000 from REI, Research Electronics International, out of Nashville.
I feel like Egon and Venkman are sitting there laughing because it sounds a bit Ghostbuster technology. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, the spectrum analyzer is the one that sees everything. Any radio frequency in the air, it picks it up. And so that actually is, you know, one of the things that gets me the jobs too, is because a lot of people, when they suspect that they are being eavesdropped on, or maybe they're being watched, or they're paranoid for whatever reason, they'll go to the spy shop and they'll buy a little RF detector for $50 or $100, and then they go home and they find out that they have RF, radio frequency, in their airwaves, and it's in their apartment somewhere, it's in their house, it's in their condo, but they can't exactly track it down, and they can't identify the frequency because those machines don't do that.
Yeah.
And then so they end up calling me and they say, yeah, so there's RF in my place, I need you to come out. And I said, yeah, how did you know that? Well, I bought an RF detector from the spy shop. And I said, yeah. The thing is great. It does a great job. It tells you there's RF in the airways, but we already know that it's everywhere. You can't get away from it. It's all around us.
Turn the radio on. You tune into your radio dial. Listen to the ball game. There's some RF.
Yeah, and so the RF detector's picking up radio stations and microwave ovens from neighbors and Wi-Fi's from right down the street, and so. Anyway,
and
spectrum analyzer will locate it and identify the frequency, and then hone in on it and find it.
Yeah, and as things change, you know, as technology keeps changing, you know, there's only going to be more wireless stuff. There's going to be more of the goodies that we have in our houses that will throw all that stuff off. So
the education keeps coming on, where I got to keep going back for refresher course and learning more. And that's another thing, another expense that, people don't think of and don't really know about, that I go to Nashville probably every year. Sometimes I've gone twice a year for a week at a time. And that's another $10,000 venture, where you got to learn how to work the machines and decipher the information and read it and properly utilize it.
yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that, how serious those guys are down there, because it's like, it's a commitment, man. If you're going to do it, like, you really need to do it. I mean, I totally get it why, if you decide that you want to go down this route, that, it's lucrative, but it's definitely an investment, for, to get the, I guess, to get everything off the ground and get going, and then to stay, it's almost like continuing education. So we're going to pop out for a break. And when we come back, I want to really kind of talk a little more about that and really understand what this is, how it works. And as an investigator, when you get those phone calls, like how you should be calling that guy, calling the deans of the world to really understand how to monetize that phone call. And leave it to the experts, no pun intended. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Satellite Investigations is the premier investigation resource in New York State. Founder Matthew Spaier was named PI Magazine's Investigator of the Year. If you need investigative assistance in New York State, visit their site at satellitepi.com. Get results, not excuses. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Are you a member of NCISS? Do you know what this great organization does? The National Council of Investigation and Security Services was formed in 1975 to keep a watchful eye on legislation that affects our industry. Now more than ever, there are data privacy and DMV issues popping up all over the country. Consider joining and supporting this much-needed watchdog for our industry. Learn more at nciss.org. Check out the latest issue of PI Magazine, available online or via hard copy. Visit pimagazine.com to learn more.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, I got a good pal of mine, Dean Gluth. I'm welcoming you back to the program, the debugging expert. How you doing, man?
I'm excellent. I'm honored to be talking to Investigator of the Year last year.
It was a sham. Yeah, I don't know. Nanos is still cashing my checks.
Crooked voting.
Yeah, there you go. But no, all joking aside, incredible honor for me. Just to put in a lot of work, and I have a real passion for educating people, and I think this show is probably one of the reasons that the nomination was there. And I love doing it.
You do an amazing job, and everybody looks forward to it.
I love doing it. I love chatting with people and just getting to know folks a little better, and educating the listeners as to the types of investigators that are out there, and people that have specialties and things. So today we are talking about debugging. And prior to the break, you had teased a little bit about going down to Nashville and doing some training. And for folks that are not familiar with that, can you break that down and what that looks like?
Well, the equipment that is primarily used in bug sweeping or debugging is the spectrum analyzer, as I said, and then there's another device called the nonlinear junction detector. The nonlinear junction detector detects electronics, snips out electric devices, whether they're on or off or powered down or dead. And so if the device is transmitting, that's what the spectrum analyzer will find, or their Andre, the RF detector will see that. But if it's dead and if it's powered down or remotely turned off, I mean, that's when you need to get this other device, the nonlinear junction detector. And the Cadillac version of all this equipment is made by REI. It's a company out of suburban Nashville. It's actually called Cookeville, Tennessee. And Research Electronics International makes the best equipment. So good that, you know, that's the FBI uses it, the Secret Service, embassy security companies. I mean, when I went there for my training, I was in a class on one of my visits there. I was in a class with 7 other investigators learning the equipment, and I was the only one from America.
Really?
You know, people in the class were from Saudi Arabia and Finland and England and Canada, and our embassy security guy from Haiti.
Wow.
Was there, and they sweep, you know, their embassies with this equipment. This is the Cadillac version of everything. It's the best. So it is very expensive, but it's also very technical, and you got to go learn how to work it.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting. You know, I guess they have a reputation, right? And you know, it's not like you're going and buying something on Amazon. You know, it's the real deal for sure.
And the product is so sought after, and that people can't even find them for sale. You know, they don't get sold used on aftermarket very often. If you want it, you got to go to REI, and the Spectrum Analyzer, the Oscar they call it, is $36,000.
Right.
And the nonlinear junction detector is $16,000. And then, like I said, you got to go there and spend a week and take the class and learn how to work it. And to truth be told, I don't think I'm the only one to admit this. I had to take it more than once, because you'll learn maybe 50% of what that device can do, and then you got to realize you got to go take it again, and you might learn 3/4 of it, and maybe the third time you might have almost all of it, and that's where I'm at. This is
don't feel bad, man. You passed the Illinois test on the first time. You're good on that.
Well, it's something that they teach fast, and you better take it in fast.
Yeah.
But it's a week-long class. It's Monday through Friday. So it's Monday morning from 8:30 in the morning to 5 p.m. And it's Monday through Friday. It's a long week.
Yeah,
so a lot of
I believe it. I got to wonder if they're having like problems with chips and shortages and getting that equipment out too. If they're
well, they make all their own stuff, so maybe not. I would doubt that. Literally, their training facility and their offices are in front of their production warehouse and factory behind them. They build it all.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah,
whoever's got that business model, whoever came up with that idea, I mean, it's a pretty penny, but people are paying it. And, you know, it's not like you don't make that money back. I'm sure you've made that money back. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing, right?
Yeah, and you did touch on a little bit ago about it being a little bit more lucrative than investigations, and I could, you know, sum that up in where if I were to make $2,000 or $3,000 doing surveillance, which we used to do, you know, workers' comp surveillance, which I still do, you know, that could take 3 or 4 days to make a $2,000 or $3,000 invoice to put that together. And honestly, I can go out and do a bug sweep in one day and make $2,000 or $3,000, and I might only be there 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah,
depending on the size of the house and or the residence.
So let's talk about that for a second. So essentially, it's based upon like square footage.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. That's how you guys do it, right?
When we get the call, we always ask that, and sometimes they don't know. We try to either get it from a tax assessor's document if it's a house, or a real estate transaction document.
So you and I were talking offline during the break about some of the pitfalls, right, or just some of the side results of doing the business and getting into it. And one of the things you said I thought was interesting is you know, most of the time you're not finding a device, right? You're going through and you're doing the sweep, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's kind of giving peace.
It is rare. I mean, honestly, if anybody's doing this business and saying that they're finding devices every time they go out, they're lying to you.
Right.
You know, the calls that are coming in are people who are afraid that they're being eavesdropped on. They suspect they're being eavesdropped on. They think they are. Maybe they're a little paranoid. Maybe we even get into some mental illness sometimes from the callers. But to actually go out and find a spy device or an eavesdropping device in the location is rare. And when we do, it's a celebration to be had for sure. But most of the time we find out that there's, especially this day and age where the digital age is changing, where people are eavesdropping on their ex-spouse or their child custody case component with other means, and they're not putting a camera so much in the living room anymore, or a
Right.
microphone in a stuffed animal in the baby's room. They're
Right.
doing it on the cell phone. It's a cellular device malware spyware issue, or they're putting keystroke loggers on the computer. They're seeing the texts and the emails going through their laptop. So that's where we end up going down. We have to start somewhere. You have to take care of all the things. You got to clean up everything. And the first thing is usually the residents. Know the residence is clean. We give them the peace of mind that their residence is clean, and then we start looking at the digital devices.
So do you find yourself getting into that world of cell phone forensics then?
I thought I was going to go into that, and I wanted to. I started doing that, and I found out again what I said before is sometimes you might want to think you're going to do something, but sometimes it's better to have a guy.
Yeah. I got a couple people that I've used in the past. Amber Schroeder's one that comes to mind, and Parabin and Rob Freed, Sandline Global, two incredibly professional and great organizations when it comes to doing that type of work.
And talk about expenses. Those people who do that, the expense of their software, and Celebrex, I believe, is one of them, and that's the key one, and the Parabin.
Right.
That software costs so much, and it could be $10,000 for the software, and then you have to pay $1,000 or $2,000 a year for annual licensing fees.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that investment going on, you can't do that either. So there's another.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and Parabin does their whole conference every year on doing this stuff and training people up, and
that is also very lucrative. But again, I find myself busy enough with the books. I'll listen. Call to somebody else.
You would think that it's like you got to go down a checklist, right? Do this first, do that first, do this first, and make sure you do that too. And it's like you get your little piece of the pie, but there's other parts that need to get done too, right?
Well, we have to be connected.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of being together, working with other investigators in the associations, whether you're state associations, the national associations. You have to know people, and you have to have connections everywhere. You can't just do a Google search for somebody and hope you're going to get the right guy.
And that also means going to conference events, NCISS, NALI, Intelnet. Like, these are conferences that if you want to have that national presence or build those relationships, you need to go to things. I talk about even osmosis. I talk about all the time, like osmosis. That's not really my wheelhouse. I'm not really getting business out of going there, but I'm learning. Folks that are there doing things that I'm not doing. There's a lot of DoD people that go there. It's like it's cool to see technology and learn things and find out what the trends are. Right.
Completely believe in that. I've always believed in that. My 25 years being a private detective agency owner, I've always engaged in the associations, participated in them, get involved in management, the board member positions, like the officer positions, but going to the conferences and knowing the people, meeting friends across the country, and then having relationships where you know who to call is the best. And honestly, you couldn't be in business without it, I believe. And that is one of the successes I've enjoyed is having these relationships.
Yeah, and we've served on at least one board together, at least one I can think of, and it's cool, man. It's cool having you in the room, I think you've got a real passion for that as well. NCISS is one that comes to mind for me, and with what you do, like, there's an importance there for an organization like NCISS for you, because privacy is such an issue. It's such a hot topic. Educating politicians on exactly what a debugging expert does. No, we're not the guys that are out there planting listening devices. We're finding them, right?
I do get that call on occasion.
Making sure they understand that,
Funny, when I get that call, I have to quickly shut that one down and tell the person that would be a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
my motto.
Exactly.
We
Right.
don't plant, we find, we remove.
Yeah. I can think of some funny stories I've heard from some people with regards to bugs and finding things and all that other stuff. It's
Most of
definitely a
the funny
challenge.
stories come in to play when we discuss the calls and the
Mm,
callers. And unfortunately, a lot of people are suffering from some sort of mental illnesses,
yeah.
and it might even be schizophrenia, or there's a level below that, which is called paranoid. I can't. I lost train of thought on that one, but
That's all right. You're not a doctor, right? You're
yeah,
Dr. Gluth.
we might have to edit that out. But
You're not Dr.
I
Gluth.
got it. I know. Let's start. Click back in. Prosecutorial delusion is
There
the.
you go.
So when you suffer from these things, you're just thinking people are watching you, and
Yeah.
those calls are all the same. It's amazing to me. I could get 10 of those calls a year, but they'll all be exactly the same. It's the exact same script. They say the exact same thing. They say the exact same fears. And I could tell early on in that call that there is no device there, and we're not going to find one.
Well, you know what they're doing after they get off the phone with you? They're calling me because, Satellite Investigation is the name of my company. So, like I get these phone calls all the
Your
time.
satellites are the ones spying on you.
Yeah, I shut it down. I shut those calls
Yeah.
down. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Please.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I end up talking myself out of a lot of jobs, and because I feel for these people, and I can tell there's a mental illness there. In fact, my daughter is a high school psychologist and went and got her graduate degree from Indiana University, and so I know that what the mental illness part of this is. And
Yeah.
when I feel bad for these people, I cannot take their money, and they call and they tell me the situation, and I try to let them down easily. I try to let them know what my feelings are and what they're telling me. And I basically talked myself out of a job. And then they'll call back about a month later, and now they're a little bit more worked up, and they have to tell me more. And this more of the things that happened, and more of the things that made them upset. And I can tell they're worked up. But again, I'll tell them, let them down easy. They'll call back a week or two later. Now they're crying, and they're hysterics. They're hysterical. They call me asking me, they need me to do it. And I said, all right, here's the only way I'm going to do this is if this gives you the peace of mind you need, if you need to know this, I'll come out and show you that there's nothing there. I'll prove to you that there isn't anything there. There's no device, and we're not going to find anything. If that's what you need to feel better, to get through life, I'll be glad to do that for you.
Yeah.
And we end up getting there. So that's where we end
Yeah,
up.
I've heard Jimmy Mess has said the same thing, right? He's another guy that does bug sweeps,
He's the
right?
best. He's my mentor.
He's your mentor, right?
Out on the East Coast there, he handles everything nationwide, and he's so busy that sometimes he gets things in the Midwest. He has to know the guy out here, and that's where I'm in. So.
Well, you must be an expert then, because if he trusts you to do your stuff, right?
Well, hopefully.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's really good.
Jimmy Massis is actually the speaker who I saw speak at an NCISS conference, who convinced me that this was the path to go down, and this is what I should do, and I should make that transition and the pivot. Something you talked about earlier, when business change, when the economy changes, you gotta make a move. And I read the book Who Moved My Cheese, and it's a famous managerial book that I decided I needed to figure out where my cheese is.
There you go. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad for me. That's the one that inspired me to start my business.
I wish I read that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was too young to not take a chance. So if it didn't work out, big deal. It's not like you got a mortgage to worry about. I mean, I didn't at that point. So,
like I said, I wish I read that one. Put 2 girls through college, and I was always the poor dad.
That's all right. It's okay. It's not too late. I think with COVID, also, you got to throw that into the mix with mental health, and people being sheltered in place for, almost 2 years. The paranoia of Big Brother watching, or, I'm working from home. is somebody now watching me to make sure that I'm working from home? Like you get that, right? I can only imagine the level of inquiries that you would get. I think when people find out how much it costs, that's the other thing too. You get tons of phone calls, and you tell them the price, and they're like, "Ooh, I don't
We
want it
don't
that bad."
exactly talk price right away, and then I'll usually answer that question with, well, it's not an inexpensive venture you're going down here.
Yeah,
We try to talk about the issues, and then eventually we will have to figure out what per square footage it is and how much it is per square foot, and then that's when they have to sometimes think about it and sometimes call me back the next day.
do you find yourself getting calls from corporations with regards to like business meetings and trade secrets and stuff like that?
Business corporate offices and the executive offices, the CFO office, the CEO office. Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah.
To get those calls. Those are the primary calls to get. Those are the ones that we would like to land more of than
they pay. I mean, come on, it's like a write-off for them.
And I have proudly done a couple corporation jobs that I did a couple of years ago that you always hope that you get the repeat business, or they want to come back and redo the venture, and I get the call. And I just did another repeat job where they said, "Let's do it again," and I said, "That's what we're talking about. That's the call you want to get."
I thought you were going to say that you were proud that you found 10 different devices at the one of the instances that you were doing research.
Well, that CEO is just happy to know that his office is clean. So
yeah, it's
whatever it costs is worth it to him when I go up there.
Peace of mind, right? You gotta figure it out. Yeah, and those are the easier calls to have because you're not the psychologist. Also, it's that's one of the reasons I try and stay away from that kind of work. I stay away from matrimonial stuff. I'm not a therapist, man. I can't take the time to guide somebody one way or the other. It's just not my MO, right?
Taking the time is part of it because you got to hear the year-long story, and you got to figure out how to cut that down and stop the babble, and let's get to the point here.
So it's funny you say that. So I had an instance where somebody was working for me, doing a job in the last few weeks, and he's kind of on the newer side. Like, we're still training. He's doing an amazing job, but he was sitting down with somebody, and the meeting took like over 3 hours, and I was like, "Hey man, like, I can't bill
for that.
I can't bill 3 hours of my client. Like, why did you take so long?" He's like, "The guy wouldn't sign anything or do it until he told his story. He was insistent that I sit there and listen to word for word." He's like, "It was agonizing. I was there for so long." I was like, "Yeah, just text me or call me. I would have gotten you out of it. Hey, my boss says wrap it up." Like, you could have done it that way. But he's like, no, the guy was like really insistent. And at the end of the day,
escape route next time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good learning experience for him. I obviously paid him for the time he was there, so it's like money coming out of my pocket. But
I get those calls are always longer than I wish they were, and they always have to tell me the 5-year history when all I really need to know is the 5-day history.
Yeah. So before we wrap things up, what do you think are a few mistakes that investigators make when they get these phone calls and either they try and do things themselves or they don't lower the hammer to bring in the expert?
Yeah, most often, and I was probably guilty of this initially too early on, when you get the call, and maybe I get the call for criminal defense investigator or do a honesty shop in a retail center. I said, I don't do that. And then I might give them the name of somebody who can, but and then give up that job and give up that price. But what I've been telling people for the past 5 years now is, you all do bug sweeps. All you investigators are bug sweepers. You can put that on your website. You can put that on your business card. And when you get that call, you don't say no, because if you say yes, you call somebody like Jimmy Mises out in the East Coast, or you can call me in the Midwest, and then I'm sure there's guys out in the West Coast and even in the South who do the same, and they will give you the referral fee. You take the call, you say, I'll have my investigator get right back to you. And then I call them and we get the job, and then I cut you a 20% referral check.
Sounds like you sat in on a Mess's marketing.
I just write checks to investigators, and I'm proud to say that this year alone, I've written over $12,000 in referral checks to investigators, and they just cashed a check doing nothing. All they did was took in a call and called me.
That's great.
And I land the job, and then I send them a check, and that's what everybody needs to be doing and thinking that I do bug sweeps. Everybody does bug sweeps now, and you just need to know who to call to do it.
Yeah, and I guess what it comes down to, like, don't waste your money on buying stuff if you're not going to do it. If you're not going to go down to Nashville and make that investment, you really shouldn't do it. I think if I remember correctly, I did talk to Jimmy a while back, and I think he said the must-have piece of equipment, I think, was the Oscar. Do you feel that the same way on that too? Or yeah, is that the must-have?
That's exactly what I was alluding to earlier, that if you don't have a spectrum analyzer and what REI calls their Oscar, you know, an Oscar green and an Oscar blue. If you don't have a spectrum analyzer, if you don't have the Oscar, we like to say you shouldn't be doing bug sweeps. You shouldn't be going out and calling yourself a bug sweeper if you don't have the Oscar or the spectrum analyzer. There's other versions. There's some that come from England and some that are made in Saudi Arabia, but the Oscars are an American version of the Cadillac, and we love it. And again, if you don't have it, you shouldn't be doing it.
Sure. Do they offer financing? I'm curious if you can finance all that stuff. No, we're cash only.
You got to find it on your own, and that's something I had to take a loan out.
There you go. We're not a bank. That's probably a good revenue stream for them. They should think about it.
I'm sure that they probably thought about that, and they probably thought that that's not something they want to deal with.
Yeah, because I would think there'd be a lot of defaults.
It'd be a collection issue for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, who wants to do that?
Exactly. All right, man. So I think we're going to wind down here. This was great, Dean. I really appreciate you coming on and just giving us a little taste of what the debugging life is like.
Well, I'm not sure that we talked much about debugging or bug sweeping, but a lot of the peripheral issues are what we talk about most, I think.
Yeah. So how do folks get a hold of you if they do want to specifically ask some questions?
www.thedebuggingexperts, all one word, THE, debugging experts with an S plural is my website. My contact information is on there. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. Hopefully follow us, like us on Facebook. And then my phone number is 847-301-1475. That area code 847 is suburban Chicago.
Awesome.
But again, I'll go to the job. We'll have to put a travel expense on a job that's far away, and sometimes there aren't any investigators with spectrum analyzers, and I got to travel. And I have gone, 9 hours up to Minneapolis, and I've gone 9 hours south into Tennessee. I've gone into Ohio and out to Iowa. So, you go where the job takes you, and you got to put travel expenses on there. If the client needs it done, they'll pay it.
Sounds like you feel more comfortable driving your equipment than flying with your equipment.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how the national boys do that. And I would be so afraid of TSA messing up my equipment that I think I would rather drive. I'll do the 18-hour drive rather than risk my equipment getting bounced around the airport.
I agree with you. So, all right, man, we're going to wind down here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody next week on the next show.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks to Dean for jumping on and giving us some information on the world of debugging. It certainly is a financial investment to do it the right way. We'd also like to thank Crosstracks, NCISS, PI Institute of Investigation, and Satellite Investigations for sponsoring our show. So please support our great supporters. Have you thought about joining Investigators Toolbox? Now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Just use code PIP 2018-36 to save 10% on membership. If you have a question or a comment about the show, just email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com, and you could also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show, so make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.